Let's talk about rigor. We've all heard it before. Raise the rigor, raise the rigor, raise the rigor. And if you're not new to my channel, then you know I already did one video on how to raise the rigor. Well, this is another video on raising the rigor in 2022. Some of the things I discussed in my first video were that you have to make sure that you're making what you're teaching your students relevant to what's going on in the real world. There has to be a connection between what they're experiencing in their everyday lives and what they're listening to in your classroom. That's true. Make sure that you are covering this. This is a way that you can get them more involved in what you're teaching. We also talked about ways in which you can get them more excited about what they were learning. We talked about doing reels and doing previews. Well, in this video, we're going to talk about the questioning style. I did a short clip on questioning, but we're going to get more in depth on it today. Number one, first of all, make sure when you're getting ready to question your students that you have planned out the material that you're going to do, which is a part of your planning process. And then you have planned out your questions. Know what you're going to ask your students. Make sure you've looked at it. Make sure it's not a simple yes or no answer. So make sure you have planned out your questions ahead of time. Also, ask yourself, if I'm the student, put yourself in their place. Take a walk in their shoes, as Atticus Finch says in To Kill a Mockingbird. You want to get in somebody else's shoes and walk around them. So imagine that you are your student. Imagine that you have been asked the question that you just asked them. What's going to be your response? And once you come up with what your response is, you go from there. Have another question ready to go along with the first question. So make sure that question is thought-provoking. So number one was to make sure that you have prepared your question and your material ahead of time. The second thing you're going to want to do, want to make sure that you do, is that you pause after you ask the question. Statistics have shown that teachers were bad about asking a question and not really waiting on the students to respond. We jump to the student that has the answer instead of waiting on the response. So just because little Johnny is taking a little while to answer the question does not mean we move on to another student. It means that we take our time and we wait, we pause and give them a few seconds to answer the question. Yes, Susan may have her hand up wanting to go ahead and answer the question, but give Johnny time to answer before moving on to little Susan. So make sure you have allotted time for the pause. So, quick question, teachers. Do you pause after asking your students questions, or do you plow right ahead? Let's think about it. So many of us are guilty of that, of just moving along to the next student. So let's not do that. The third thing you're going to want to do to try to increase the rigor in your classroom is, after you've paused, after you've asked the question, after you have prepared all these wonderful goodies for them, is to move into that next question. So to answer the question, ask them to dig deeper. Ask them to do some analyzing. Ask them to do some thinking. And no, this may not wrap up in one day. This may require them to go outside of your classroom and do some research. And that's exactly what we want. We want our students to be thinking. We want them to be processing. We want them to be moving further along in their thinking. So, raise the rigor. How do we raise the rigor? We raise the rigor by improving the way we ask questions of our students. So this is going to be a series on how we raise the rigor.